Imagine being caught in the most shocking of crimes, heartless, brutal, and filled with a complete lack of remorse. You're standing before the judge, the weight of your actions hanging heavily in the air as you hear the words you've dreaded most: life sentence. These 5 couples found themselves in the unthinkable, each reacting in their own twisted way as their fates were sealed. From the chilling indifference of a child's life taken to the jaw-dropping confessions that left everyone stunned, let's dive into the most disturbing reactions to life sentences. Lissa and Christopher Rodriguez. The cold-blooded deception. Lissa and Christopher Rodriguez's case left the courtroom in utter disbelief. In the quiet halls of Cleveland's courthouse, no one could have predicted the extent of the horror that would unfold. Their son, Jordan, a 5-year-old with special needs, was found dead after a night filled with unimaginable neglect. What should have been a desperate call to 911 turned into an unforgivable crime. Instead of seeking help for an unconscious child, Christopher and Lissa decided to cover up the death, a decision that would haunt them forever. They wrapped the child's body in blankets, sealed it in bags filled with mothballs, and buried him in their own backyard as if he were an unwanted object. The couple's indifference to their child's suffering revealed a terrifying side to their personalities that no one could have anticipated. But what truly made this case chilling was the couple's ability to lie so effortlessly. Lissa, when questioned by authorities, claimed that Jordan was in Texas with his father, a complete fabrication that fell apart under scrutiny. As the police dug deeper, they found out the unimaginable truth. Jordan's body was buried just a few yards from their home. It wasn't until months later, when Christopher's brother finally came forward, that the police were able to unearth the grim evidence. This tip led them straight to the crime scene, and what they found next was a devastating revelation. A child's body, neglected and abandoned, was all but forgotten by the very people who should have cared for him. During their sentencing, Lissa and Christopher were offered a plea deal, but what followed was nothing short of shocking. The plea deal dismissed murder charges, and in exchange, the couple pled guilty to charges of involuntary manslaughter, felonious assault, 2 counts of child endangerment, and abuse of a corpse. Lissa was sentenced to a paltry 25 years, but Judge Nancy Russo was not going to let this crime slide. With a fierce sense of justice, she rejected the plea and delivered a much harsher sentence. She was disgusted by the couple's blatant disregard for the life of a child, and she made her decision clear. Christopher would face 28 years in prison, the maximum possible sentence. The courtroom was left in stunned silence as Judge Russo condemned the couple's behavior, calling it one of the most horrific cases she had ever encountered in her 22 years on the bench. She didn't mince words, accusing them of having children without considering the responsibility or value of their lives. The couple, who once stood hand in hand, now faced each other with cold stares, their future shattered by their own actions. But the twist? Lissa and Christopher were not done with their lies. They tried to make a mockery of the court's justice, with Christopher's cold demeanor remaining unchanged as he was sentenced. Even after months of investigation, their lack of remorse was almost as chilling as the crime itself. As Lissa and Christopher were led away to serve their time, one thing remained clear: the memory of their crime would haunt the court and the families who lost a child to their indifference. The details of their crime, their lies, and the betrayal of their son's trust would forever mark this case as one of the most sinister examples of parental cruelty in history. Jeremy and Christine Moody, neo-Nazi murderers without remorse. Jeremy and Christine Moody's story is one that will make your blood run cold. What seemed like a typical sentencing turned into a spectacle of madness and utter indifference as the couple stood before the judge in a South Carolina courtroom, their hands cuffed, their faces expressionless. Both Jeremy and Christine had been convicted of first-degree murder for the brutal killing of Charles and Gretchen Parker, a crime they committed after finding Charles's name on a sex offender registry. The couple, motivated by their extremist beliefs, believed they were on a divine mission to rid the world of what they saw as undesirables, and Charles was their target. But what made this case truly chilling wasn't just the murder, it was the couple's attitude during the sentencing. The couple's neo-Nazi beliefs were unmistakably apparent in their actions. Jeremy's tattoos, which included the words skinhead across his neck and white power etched across his forehead, sent a clear message of hate. The Moodys had no qualms about their crime, and in a shocking turn of events, they admitted to their guilt in court without a second thought. As the judge read their charges, the couple showed no remorse, no regret for their actions. It was as though they felt justified in their sickening mission, and they were determined to share that justification with the world. They didn't just kill Charles, they had plans to kill more sex offenders, and they made sure to share that chilling detail with authorities. But the real shock came when the couple, in the face of their inevitable sentencing, began to plead for mercy. Jeremy, with his smug expression, claimed that he had sinned but sought forgiveness from God, all while while begging the court to show him compassion. He argued that God had forgiven him, so why couldn't the court do the same? Christine, similarly, begged for mercy, expressing a feigned sorrow as she asked for a chance to stay with her husband. Their pleas were as hollow as their actions. The couple's utter lack of self-awareness was both terrifying and infuriating, making it impossible for anyone in the courtroom to sympathize with them. What they did was unforgivable, and no amount of repentance could undo their vile acts. The judge, Judge Lee Alfred, was not swayed by their pleas. She was resolute in her decision. "If you were allowed to go free, I have no doubt you would continue your mission of hate," she declared. The decision was final. Jeremy and Christine Moody were both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even as the gavel fell, the couple remained defiant, sharing a final kiss before being led away to their separate fates. The courtroom was silent as they were separated, but their chilling behavior would leave an indelible mark on the justice system. It was a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who believe they are justified in their actions. But just when you thought it couldn't get more twisted, the post-sentencing behavior of the Moody couple turned even darker. After their conviction, they began to express regret for their remorse in court. Jeremy and Christine were caught on video laughing and mocking their sentencing as if it were a game. The very people they murdered were nothing more than pawns in their twisted ideology, and the revelation that they would have done it again if given the chance made their sentencing all the more fitting. The final words they spoke, their disregard for their victims, proved that the justice system had done the right thing, but the question still lingered. Would these two ever truly understand the extent of their horrific actions? The chilling truth is that the couple's beliefs were so deeply embedded in their minds that no amount of punishment could ever be enough to undo the damage they caused. Their cruelty had no bounds, and their indifference to life itself left a scar on the legal system that would be felt for years to come. Jeremy and Christine Moody's case was not just about murder. It was a stark reminder of how dangerous unchecked hatred can be when it goes unchecked, leaving the world a little darker with every life it takes. Dia and Eric Millerberg, the horrific death of Alexis Rasmussen. In Ogden, Utah, the story of Dia and Eric Millerberg stands out as one of the most twisted, depraved cases of negligence and violence. The couple's sickening crime began with a seemingly ordinary evening at home, but soon spiraled into an unimaginable tragedy. Their 16-year-old babysitter, Alexis Rasmussen, was tragically injected with a lethal combination of heroin and methamphetamine by Eric Millerberg, marking the third such overdose she had suffered under their watch. What followed was a gruesome cover-up that would ultimately reveal the true darkness of the couple's relationship and their utter disregard for human life. The couple's relationship with Alexis, steeped in both drugs and dysfunction, ended with her lifeless body being dumped in a remote area and buried in a shallow grave, hidden from the world for more than a month. The investigation unraveled layer after layer of manipulation and lies. After Alexis's death, the Millerbergs went to great lengths to conceal their actions. Fearing Eric's criminal history and the possibility of returning to prison, the couple chose to dispose of Alexis's body rather than seek medical help or call the authorities. Their actions were chilling in their coldness, as they treated the life of a young girl as if it had no value whatsoever. It wasn't until a confidential tip came in that Alexis's body was finally discovered, buried like garbage in a barren stretch of land, her death all but forgotten by those who should have been protecting her. Dia Millerberg's courtroom testimony was filled with sorrowful words, but it was too little, too late. She pled guilty to charges of obstructing justice, desecrating a body, and illegally acquiring prescription drugs. In exchange for a lighter sentence, she agreed to testify against her husband, but her testimony only painted a more disturbing picture of her relationship with Eric. Despite her attempts to appear remorseful, the evidence against them was undeniable, and the judge, W. Brent West, delivered a crushing sentence. Dia was sentenced to a mere 4 years in prison, while Eric, who had caused the overdose, received 6 years, a sentence many saw as far too lenient for the level of cruelty they had inflicted on Alexis. The couple's indifference to their actions left the courtroom in disbelief. Even though Dia expressed regret, claiming to be disgusted by her actions, the weight of her guilt seemed hollow and self-serving. The reality was that Eric and Dia were far from the loving parents they had portrayed themselves to be. Instead, they were manipulative criminals who valued self-preservation over human life, hiding behind a facade of remorse that no one could truly believe. The case of the Millerbergs was a chilling reminder of how easily lives could be destroyed when people with deep emotional issues are given the power to care for others, and how even those who seem to express regret may still have a heart too cold to be redeemed. Despite their sentences, the public outcry over the Millerbergs' light punishment was deafening. The sentence seemed like a slap on the wrist for a crime so heinous. Many in the courtroom and the public couldn't help but question the justice system, wondering how anyone could commit such a vile act and only face a fraction of the punishment they deserved. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the entire case Matthews was the knowledge that Eric and Dia Millerberg would eventually return to society, their crimes lingering like a stain on the community. The question remained, would they ever truly feel the weight of their actions, or was their remorse nothing more than a carefully crafted performance? Cyrus Matthews, a road rage incident turned deadly. Cyrus Matthews' story is an example of just how far a moment of rage can escalate into something far more sinister. It all started with a seemingly insignificant road rage incident that could have easily been forgotten in the chaos of everyday life. But Cyrus Matthews, already prone to violent outbursts, took things to a terrifying new level. After a minor altercation on the road, Matthews' temper flared, and he went on the run, with his girlfriend by his side. What followed was a reckless, high-speed chase that would put everyone's lives in danger. Matthews, driving an old and unstable vehicle, crashed into a couple's SUV, injuring them in the process. The situation escalated into a full-blown disaster as Matthews fled the scene, his actions now compounded by felony assault charges. What should have been a simple case of road rage turned into a nightmarish series of events that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Matthews' violent and erratic behavior seemed out of control, especially after the crash, when he showed little regard for the damage he had caused. He and his girlfriend fled the scene, speeding away from the wreckage as police gave chase, their pursuit reaching speeds of up to 90 miles per hour. The madness continued as Matthews' escape attempt turned into a terrifying pursuit that seemed to have no end in sight. The scene was chaotic, with sirens blaring, and police desperately trying to catch up to the criminal who had just caused an accident and seriously injured innocent people. When the police finally apprehended Matthews, the extent of his recklessness was fully realized. His girlfriend, who had been complicit in the crime, was not held responsible for the high-speed chase or the damage caused, but Matthews' actions were undeniable. He was arrested, charged with aggravated assault for his role in the crash and the harm caused to the couple in the SUV. Yet even in the face of such overwhelming evidence, Matthews seemed unfazed. He was not apologetic for his actions and showed no remorse for the lives he had endangered. The brutal truth was that Matthews had no regard for the consequences of his actions, and his behavior left everyone questioning how such a seemingly small incident could spiral into something so destructive. The most shocking moment came when Matthews, after being arrested, continued to show no remorse. During his trial, he attempted to argue his way out of prison, suggesting that perhaps his sentence could be reversed. But the judge saw right through his feeble defense. Matthews had demonstrated a complete lack of responsibility, and his dangerous behavior was enough to ensure that he would be held accountable. His case became a textbook example of how unchecked rage could quickly lead to chaos, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Ultimately, Matthews was sentenced to 425 days behind bars, a punishment that many felt was too lenient for the crime he had committed. The world would have to wait and see whether his time in prison would offer any form of rehabilitation, or whether Matthews would remain the same violent individual who had terrorized the streets. Mr. and Mrs. Yang, family feud gone. Horribly wrong. The story of Mr. and Mrs. Yang's courtroom eruption is one that defies all logic. It began as a simple legal dispute over money, a common occurrence in courts around the world. However, in this South China courtroom, things took a shocking and violent turn when the couple, embroiled in a bitter divorce, became the center of an unbelievable altercation. The tension between Mrs. Yang and her soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law was already palpable, and what started as an argument about unpaid debts quickly escalated into an all-out physical confrontation. As the verbal dispute grew heated, Mr. Yang could no longer contain his anger and lashed out at his wife for speaking to his mother in a manner he deemed disrespectful. What followed next would send shockwaves through the courtroom. In the blink of an eye, Mrs. Yang shifted her fury onto her mother-in-law, striking her across the head in a fit of rage. But the violence didn't stop there. Mr. Yang, enraged by his wife's attack on his mother, violently intervened, hitting her in retaliation. The chaotic scene spiraled further out of control as the couple, both caught in their whirlwind of emotions, fought in front of the judge and the onlookers. Court officials, struggling to maintain order, were helpless as the physical altercation continued. It wasn't until the police arrived that the violence was finally quelled, but by then, the damage was done. The courtroom, once a place of law and order, had transformed into a violent battleground, and no one could have predicted just how out of control this family feud would become. After the dust settled, the couple was taken into custody, charged with assault. Mrs. Yang and Mr. Yang's reckless actions not only led to a physical altercation, but also disrupted the entire legal process, throwing the court's procedures into chaos. Both were found guilty of assault, with Mr. Yang sentenced to 15 days in detention and his mother receiving a 5-day sentence. The bizarre courtroom scene left the judge and onlookers in disbelief, questioning what had led to such a violent outburst over something so trivial. The violent nature of the argument left everyone questioning the true depth of the dysfunction within the Yang family, raising disturbing concerns about their emotional stability. The most unsettling twist came when the couple, after being sentenced, were seen laughing and joking as they were escorted from the courtroom. Their lack of remorse for their violent behavior left the courtroom stunned. The casual attitude displayed by Mr. and Mrs. Yang suggested that they had no understanding of the gravity of their actions or the pain they had caused. Their shocking behavior highlighted a chilling reality. For some, violence becomes a way of life, and the consequences are nothing more than a distant afterthought. The courtroom reactions only added to the growing sense that justice, in cases like this, often fails to fully address the underlying issues of rage and dysfunction. As the gavel falls and these disturbing cases come to an end, we're forced to confront the darkest depths of human depravity. These couples didn't just break the law, they shattered lives in unimaginable ways. From the chilling indifference shown in the courtroom to the twisted justifications of their actions, these individuals are now facing the ultimate consequences for their unthinkable choices. The horrors they inflicted are not just crimes, they are a grotesque testament to the lengths some will go to, driven by motives most of us can barely comprehend. The real question that haunts us is, how did these seemingly ordinary people spiral into such extreme darkness? What twisted logic led them to believe that they could get away with such monstrous acts? No matter what they tell themselves, the truth is undeniable. Justice caught up with them, and now they must face the consequences. If these stories have left you feeling unsettled, you're not alone. But don't just walk away. Take a moment to think about the twisted dynamics at play here. What's your take on these couples and the shocking actions they took? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to dive deeper into more twisted true crime stories, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We've got plenty more disturbing cases coming your way. Stay tuned.